Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. In the previous classes, we discussed about software application architecture. So software application contains mainly three layers: front end, back end, and database. So front end contains user interface. To develop that front end, we are going to use several technologies. Then when you perform some operation in the front end, it will communicate with the back end. In the back end, business logic will be available. To develop back end of the application, there are several technologies available. Next one, database is there, which is used for storing the data. There are several databases available in the market. Now, by using one front-end technology, one back-end technology, one database, a project will be developed. Okay, when the project developed by using multiple technologies, then how to execute that project? So how to run that project in a system? To run that project in a system, we need to install all the required softwares. For example, Angular, Java, Tomcat, Oracle. So we need to install all these softwares, then only we can run our application. Okay. So if you want to run this application in one system, that is fine. Okay, but if I want to run the same application in multiple servers, if I want to run the same application in multiple servers, then we need to install these softwares in all the servers. It is time-taking process, and there is a chance of doing the mistakes also. To avoid this problem, we are going to use a concept called containerization concept. Okay, so what is that containerization? Docker is a containerization software. By using Docker, we can execute our application as a container. So we will package our application code and application related softwares as one unit, and we will execute that in any computer. We can simplify our application execution process in any computer by using this Docker. So what is the Docker? Docker is an open source software to run the application as containers. Okay, these containers are very lightweight and they are isolated environments that is going to package your application and application dependencies. When I say dependency, dependency nothing but the software that is required to run the application. So by using Docker, we can easily execute our application in any computer. Docker is going to make our application portable. That means easily we can transfer from one system to another system. It will make your application scalable. Immediately you can run your application in multiple servers. Okay, consistency. So if your application is running in one system, then 100% guarantee that application can run in any system. Okay, and here these are the benefits available with the Docker. Then how to work with the Docker? To work with the Docker, we discussed about Docker architecture. In the Docker architecture, we are having Docker file, Docker image, Docker hub, Docker container. So what is a Docker file? Docker file is used to specify instructions to create the Docker image. Docker file is used to specify instructions to create the Docker image. That means what software is required to execute our application, those details we are going to specify in the Docker file. By using that Docker file, we are going to create the Docker image. Once the Docker image is created, that Docker image we are going to store in the Docker hub, guys. Once the Docker image is available in the Docker hub, if it is public, anybody can pull that image and they can run the image. When you run the image, then container will be created. So container represents the running process of our application. This is the Docker architecture. Then after that, we discussed about how to set up the Docker. Okay, so Docker we can set up in the Windows machine as well as in the Linux machine also. Which one is recommended? Linux is recommended because in the real time, every day we are going to work with Linux machines only. In the real time, our projects will be deployed by using Linux machines only. So yesterday we have done Docker setup in the Linux machine. I have given the video also to do the Docker setup in 3 minutes of time. I have taken one Linux machine in the AWS cloud. Then I connected with that machine by using Git bash and I installed my Docker. What Linux machine I have taken? I have taken Amazon Linux machine. For the Amazon Linux machine, these commands we are going to use. Okay, then after that, I have executed few commands related to Docker to understand how to work with the Docker. So Docker images command, which is used to display the images which are available in our system. Docker ps command, which is used to display running Docker containers in our system. Docker ps-a, it will display all containers running plus stopped containers also. Docker pull command, which is used to download the Docker image from the Docker hub. Okay. And if you want to create the Docker container, then you need to run the Docker image, Docker run image name. It is going to create the container. Inside the container, our application will execute. Sir, what is a container? Container is a Linux machine. In that Linux machine, our application will be executed. Next one, Docker RM. What is the Docker RM? That is used to delete the Docker container. Okay. Then Docker stop. What is the Docker stop? Which is used to stop the running a container. What is the start? Which is used to start the container. Docker RMI to delete a Docker image. Suppose if I want to clean up my Docker system, I want to delete all stopped containers, unused images and build cache also. I want to free up my memory. Okay. I want to delete all the stopped containers, unused images from my system. With a single command we can do that. That is called Docker system prune-a. Okay. These are the commands that we discussed in the last session. Now, so let me connect back with my Docker machine, guys. So in my AWS account, I have created one Linux machine, and in that Linux machine, I installed Docker. I have started this machine yesterday. After the class completed, I stopped that machine. Then again, today, I started this machine. Okay, connect with this machine, select this machine, and click on connect option. Okay, take this SSH command directly to connect with that machine. Go to the location where our PEM file is available. In the key pairs folder, the PEM file is available. Open git bash. Okay, now in the git bash, we are going to execute the SSH command in order to connect with the Linux machine. In that Linux machine, Docker is installed. Okay, but the Docker is running or not, we need to verify. Now I have executed. Connect to this machine. Yes, I'm connecting with that machine. With which user I connected? Who am I? I connected to this machine as a EC2 user. Now execute Docker images command. I'm trying to execute a command called Docker images. So am I getting the images or I'm not getting the images in my system? Images available in my system or images not available in my system? Images are not available in my system. That means yesterday I deleted all my images. Now I want to download one image from the Docker hub. Now there is an image called Docker pull. Docker pull image is available. Docker pull Ashok IT Spring Boot REST API. Docker pull Ashok IT slash Spring Boot REST API image is available. Execute this now. It is going to download the Docker image from the Docker hub. Okay, what is pull command? It is just to download the image, not to run the image. Pull means download the image. Now check it here, Docker images command. Yes, my image is available. Now I want to run the image. How to run the image? Observe very carefully, guys. Today's session is very, very important. Now, Docker run image ID. Docker run image ID I'm giving to run the image. Okay, when I run this image, what will happen? Container will be created. You can run the image by using image ID, or you can run the image by using image name also. Docker run image. If I run this, then container will be created. Inside the container, my application is executing. Inside the container, my application is executing. That application is running in the Tomcat web server, which is using port number 9090. It is running on the Tomcat web server, which is using the port number 9090. So here the application is running in the interactive mode, guys. Once you run your container like this, once you run your image like this, can I execute any other command in this terminal, or I cannot execute any other command in the terminal? No. Application started, terminal is blocked. So application log messages are displaying the terminal is blocked. I cannot execute any other command in the terminal. If I want to execute any other command in the terminal, I need to press Ctrl C. When I press Ctrl C, what is happening? My container terminated. So if I want to execute further command in the terminal, I need to press Ctrl C. When I press Ctrl C, my application is shutting down. My application is shutting down. So what command I used here? Docker run command I am using. I'm using a command called docker run command. If you run like this, the container will be created, but you cannot access your application. You can't execute any other command. This is just for a demo purpose, how to run the Docker image, how to create the Docker container. But we should not run like this, because whatever the application that is running in the Docker container, I should be able to access that application by using my machine. You should be able to access my application which is running in the Docker container. For that, what we need to do? So the very first thing that we need to do here, we need to run the Docker container in detached mode, guys. We need to run the Docker container in the detached mode. How to run in the detached mode? Docker run -d. So when I specify Docker run command with the -d, container will be created in the background. You can execute the other commands also in the terminal. If you execute like this, container will create. But what is the problem? You cannot execute the next command in the terminal. If you execute with -d, your container will be created in the background and you can execute the next command in the same terminal. Now let me show you. Okay. Now my containers, Docker PS, nothing is in the running state. Docker PS -a. One container created 3 minutes ago and that exited. Let me delete. Docker RM container ID. Stopped container I am deleting. Now you can check Docker PS -a. No containers are available. Docker PS -a. No containers are available. Now how I will run the container now? Docker images, guys. Okay. Docker run -d. So in the run command, I'm passing one attribute called -d. D means detached mode. Detached mode means container will run in the background. Then take the Docker image name. That's it. Docker run -d image name. Then see what is happening. Container created. Now, can I execute the next command in the terminal? Now you see Docker PS. When I use the Docker PS, my container is created 7 seconds ago. This is a container ID and up 7 seconds. My container is running. So what is the difference between this command and this command, guys? What is the difference between the first command and second command? Can you respond in the chat box? First command, second command, both are used to run the containers only. But in the first command, I am not using -d. In the second command, I am using -d. What is the meaning of -d? -d means detached mode. Container will be running in the background. What is the advantage for us? What is the advantage for us? If you run the container in the detached mode, the advantage is your terminal will be available to execute the next commands. Console will be available to execute the next command. Container will be running in the background. Are you able to follow me? Let me show you once again now. My container is in the running state. Docker stop. I'm taking this container ID. I'm stopping. Stop container. Container stopped. Then Docker RM container ID. First I stopped my container. I removed my container. Now everything is deleted. Now you see Docker ps-a, no container in the stopped state, no container available. Now run the container, Docker run. When I used Docker run with my image name, I'm not using -d. Okay, just I'm running Docker run image name. Then container will be created, logs will be displayed, but you cannot execute any other command in the terminal. If you want to execute any other command, you need to press Ctrl C. When you press Ctrl C, container will be stopped. Container will be stopped. You can't access your application. So I don't want to stop my container to execute the next command. I want to run my container in the background, detached mode. How to run the container in the detached mode? That's where we are going to use a command called Docker run command with -d. Now see, container created. My terminal is available to execute the next commands, guys. Docker images command, Docker ps command. When I execute Docker ps, my container is running from 8 seconds. So this is the container ID. Are you guys able to follow me? What is -d in the run command? Are you able to see what is -d in the run command? Could you please respond? Run command means to run the container by using image. Okay, we are running the container in the detached mode by using -d. So I want to execute the next commands. I don't want to stop the container. I want to keep my container in the running mode. So that is the reason we are using -d with -d. Very good. So now when you run the container, what is happening in the background, guys? When you run the container, what is happening in the background and how to access our application available in the container. What is the meaning of creating the container? Container creation means application is executing inside the container. Now I want to access the application in the browser. I want to give the URL to access my application. So now understand some internals. Okay. So how the container is working in the background. I have taken one Linux machine. In the AWS cloud, I have taken one Linux machine, guys. Now assume that this is my Linux machine in the AWS. Here, there is a concept called Docker Hub concept is available, which is called Docker registry. In the Docker Hub, there is one image is available. My Docker image is available in the Docker Hub. So this Docker image is public image. Anybody can download. They can pull my Docker image. What is the name of my Docker image? Ashok IT / Spring Boot REST API. Okay. So this is the name of my Docker image. By using pull command, you can download my image. So this is my Linux machine. Okay. So this is one Linux machine available in the AWS cloud. So what I have done in this Linux machine, I installed one software called Docker. Docker software I installed in the Linux machine. By using this Docker software, I am executing Docker pull command. I'm executing Docker pull with the image name. Then what happened? This Docker image downloaded into my system. Docker pull. So that means I am pulling the Docker image into my system, guys. So where is the Docker image available? Actually, the Docker image is available in the Docker Hub, guys. That is a public image. Anybody can pull that image now. So by using this Docker pull command, I downloaded the Docker image into my system. Are you clear with my point now? Are you guys clear with my point now? I am pulling the Docker image. It downloaded that Docker image into my system. So once the Docker image is pulled into my system, then the Docker image is available here. Now I am running the Docker image. When I run the Docker image, what is happening? It is creating one Docker container. It is creating one Docker container, that is C1 container 1. In this container, our application is running. Inside this container, our application is running. Actually, this container is another Linux machine. This container is another Linux VM. Inside our Linux machine, we installed Docker software. By using Docker software, we downloaded a Docker image from the Docker Hub and I executed that Docker image. Then Docker container is created. Inside the Docker container, my application is running. How the application is running? Inside the Docker container, Tomcat server is available. In that Tomcat server, my application is running. On which port number it is running, guys? This application is running on the Tomcat server with a port number called 9090. So this is called container port. Sir, how to see the container port, guys? That's where you need to check the logs of the container. Docker PS, my container running from 5 minutes. Container is a Linux machine. In that container, my application running. On which port number my application is running, we need to check the logs of the container. Take the container ID, Docker logs container ID. So if you use Docker logs container ID, it will show you container information. When I use Docker logs, log messages displaying. In the log messages, you can see that. In the log messages, you can see that how it is running. It is running in the Tomcat server. Started Tomcat server on the port number 9090. That means my application is running in the Tomcat server with the port number 9090. Where is that Tomcat server? The Tomcat server is available in the Docker container. Where is that Docker container? In the container means one virtual Linux machine. Now, I want to access this application running in the container. But here, we know the Linux machine which we created in the AWS cloud. So this is our Linux machine. Yellow color box is our Linux machine. This black color box, inside that red color box is available. Na? That the red color box, or we can say the red color box is there, right? That is container. Now, my Linux machine IP address I know. Whatever the Linux machine we created in the AWS cloud, that Linux machine IP address I know. But do you know the container machine IP address, or we don't know the container machine IP address? I don't know. My Linux machine I created in the AWS cloud, that Linux machine public IP I know. But what about our container? Container is a virtual machine. We don't know IP address of the container. Okay. Now tell me, the application is running in our AWS cloud Linux machine, or application is running in the container machine now? So this concept is very important to understand how to access the application. This concept is very important to understand how to access the application. Now tell me, application is running in the AWS cloud Linux machine, or application is running inside the container machine? Application running in the AWS cloud Linux machine, or application is running in the container machine? Application running in the container machine. Okay. Now, currently, is there any relation between the container and our Linux machine? Is there any relation between the container and our AWS cloud Linux machine? No. Currently, there is no relation. Okay. Docker containers are isolated from the host machine. So whatever the Linux machine I have, this is host machine. This is host, our main machine in which Docker software is installed. So in the AWS cloud, I created one Linux machine as a Docker server. The Linux machine we created in the AWS cloud, that Linux machine we call it as a host machine. By default, the host machines and containers are isolated. There is no relation between your container and your host machine. What is a host machine? In which machine you install the Docker software, that machine is called as a host machine. By default, your host machine and your container are isolated. There is no relation. If they are isolated, you cannot access your application. So you are running the application. It is running in the container, but the problem, container is separate, our Linux machine is separate. Currently, there is no relation between container and our Linux machine. Our Linux machine is a host machine. What is a host machine? In which machine you install Docker software, that is a host. Host can be Windows, host can be Linux also. Okay, container is a Linux machine. Host machine can be anything. By default, the behavior, containers and host machines are isolated. There is no relation between host machine and the container machine. If there is no relation, you cannot access your application. Are you clear with my point? Now, can we access our application running in the Docker container? Can we access our application running in the Docker container now? No, we cannot access now. Why we cannot access now? What is the reason? Why we cannot access the application which is running in the Docker container, guys? Can you guys tell me? Why we cannot access the application which is running in the Docker container now? Because there is no link between host machine and a container machine. Container is isolated from the host machine. Are you clear? What is a host machine? What is a host machine? Host is my Linux. My machine I created in the AWS cloud. Container is also a Linux machine, virtual machine. We don't know container IP. We don't know what is container now. That is completely isolated from the host machine. But now I want to access the application running in the container. Then what we need to do in order to access the application running in the container, we need to do some mapping. What mapping we need to do? In the host machine, I'm going to take one port number and I will map container machine port number to the host machine port number. That is called port to mapping. We need to establish the relation between container machine and host machine. Then you can access your application running inside the container. If this link is not available, you can't access your application. Okay, because isolated means independent, they are separate. Isolated means independent, there is no relation. Now I want to access my application running in the container. So to access application running in the container, you need to establish the relation. How to establish the relation? To establish the relation, we need to perform one operation called port mapping. We need to perform one operation called port mapping. Sir, how to perform the port mapping? We will perform the port mapping by using -p host machine port number colon container port number. So container is running on which port number? That you need to map with one port number in the host machine. For that we need to use a concept called -p. -p host port and container port. So when you use -p host port and container port, then by using host machine IP, host machine port, you can access your application. So if you want to access your application which is running inside the container, port mapping is mandatory. Sir, what is the meaning of port mapping? Port mapping is the process of establishing the link between container port number and host machine port number. Then only you can access application running in the container. Otherwise, you cannot access your application. Okay, from external, From outside, if you want to access your application running in the Docker container, from outside means I am using my Windows machine, guys. This is my Windows machine. From Windows machine, I want to access my application running in the Docker container. If I want to access, I need to do this port mapping. Without port mapping, it is not possible. Without port mapping, it is not possible. So external traffic means from my Windows machine or from your system, you want to access my application. My application running in the container. By default, containers are independent from the host machines. So then how to access? Establish port mapping. How to do the port mapping? -p host port colon container port. What is a container port? Application running on which port number? My application is running on the port number 9090. How can we check the container port number? Docker logs container ID. Docker logs container ID, which is going to give you the logs of your application. In the log messages, you can find out application running in the Tomcat server with the port number 9090. Now what I need to do? Here, I need to run my container like this. Docker run -d -p port number 9090 colon 9090. So if you run like this, then only we can access our application. So I want to run the Docker image. Directly if you run, container will create. You can't access, you can't execute any other command. Then what I need to do? Docker run -d. What is the meaning of -d? -d means run in the detached mode. What is -p? -p means port mapping. Container port is 9090. That I am mapping to host port number. In the host port, you can give anything, no problem. Any port number you can map it on the host machine. So container is running on 9090, that I am mapping to 8080, no problem. Suppose if you don't want to give different, you can give the same port number so that readability will be improved. My container is running on 9090, that I am mapping to the 9090 in the host machine. Then my container is linked with the host machine. Then how to access our application? Now you can access your application by using http:// host machine public IP address host port number / application URL pattern. So like this, now you can access our application. So I want to run my application by using container. How to run the container? I want to run the container in the detached mode along with port mapping. Are you clear? What is the detached mode and what is the port mapping? Are you clear? What is the detached mode and what is the port mapping now? Can you guys respond in the chat box? What is a detached mode and what is port mapping? Detached mode means you can run the container in the background. What is the purpose of port mapping? Port mapping is used to establish the relation between the container port and host port. Are you clear? Where we can find the container port number? How can you find out the container port number? Come on, guys. Where you can find out the container port number? Logs. How to check the logs of the container? You can find the container port number in the log files. How to check the logs of the container? To check the logs of the container, we are going to use a command called docker logs container ID to display container logs. That means application logs. By using docker logs command, you can check the container logs. In the container logs, you can find out the port number. So container port number you need to map with the host port number. So this is host port number. First one is host port and second one is container port. First is the host port, second is the container port. Container port number you can check in the logs of the container. That you can map to any port number on the host machine. So if you run like this, then only we can access our application. Container port number and host port number no need to be same. Do we need to keep both same ports? No, not mandatory. Container port number and host port number no need to be same. Host port number you can give anything. Host port number you can give anything. Varsha. Host port number you can give anything. Generally, people will use same port number on the host machine also. Whatever the container port is available, same port number they will give on the host machine also. But no need to give same. You can give different also. No problem. Harsha, containers are isolated, man. They are created in the Linux machine, but they are isolated. You can't access them directly. Are you clear with my point? -D, -P. -D means detached mode. -P means port mapping. Now, let me stop the container and let me establish the port mapping. Docker PS, container is running. So here I want to stop it and I want to delete it. Docker stop container ID. Okay, container is stopped. Then Docker RM container ID. Container deleted. Now see Docker PS, no running container. PS-A, there is one container in the stopped state. Let me delete that also. Fine. Now everything is clear. Docker PS command -A. Okay. So is there any container which is in the running state now? Is there any container which is in the running state now? No. Any container which is in the stopped state now? No. So no container in the running state, no container in the stopped state. Then what we need to do? Check the image available or not. Yes, image is available. Now can you tell me how to run my image in the detached mode along with port mapping? Docker run -D -P host port I'm taking 9090, container port also 9090, space name of the Docker image or image ID. That's it. So this is the final command. Docker run -D -P 9090:9090 space my image name. Now see my container created in the background. How to check the running container? By using Docker PS. Now, can we check the logs of the container? Container is in the running state. Can we check the logs of the container? Yes. How to check the logs of the container? To check the logs of the container, Docker logs container ID. Docker logs container ID. Yes, application started in the container, Tomcat server, port number 9090. Perfect. Now, I want to access my application. Okay, I want to access my application. So if you want to access your application, host port number, we need to enable in the security group of EC2 machine. Okay, running real world applications by using Docker. Docker pull command I have used first. Okay, Docker pull command I have used first, which is used to download the image. Then Docker run command. Docker run -D in the detached mode. Then Docker run with the port mapping. Okay, so what is the port mapping I'm doing? 9090 I'm doing as a port mapping. Okay, port mapping means establishing the relation. Then how to access this application, guys? Public IP of our host public IP, host public IP, host port /welcome/name. This is the URL. In order to access this, to access our application running in the container, we will use below URL. Now my application is running in the container in the detached mode with the port mapping. So to access application running in the container, we will use the below URL. 9090 is the host port number. So we need to enable that port number in the EC2 machine. By default, AWS will not allow the traffic. So in this Linux machine, my application running, port mapping I'm doing with 9090. By default, AWS will not allow the request. Then we need to enable that port number in the EC2 machine. How to enable that port number in the EC2 machine? Go to your Docker machine, select this machine, go to security tab in the machine. Okay, so select this machine. In this machine, security tab is available. Click on this. There is a security group available. Click on that security group. Then there is an option called edit inbound rules option. Click on edit inbound rules. What is our host port number? 9090. Enable that port number in the security group inbound rule. Add the rule custom TCP. Okay, port number 9090. Any request which is coming with 9090 for this host machine, I want to allow. That is the meaning of this enabling security group inbound rule. So host port number, we need to enable in the EC2 machine security group inbound rules to allow the traffic. Okay, how I am going to enable that, guys? Now, first go to the machine. I'm showing once again. Go to the machine. Select this machine, Docker. Select a security tab. Select the security tab here. Then you can see security group ID. Just click on security group ID. Then you will get a security group ID inbound rules. So here, click on edit inbound rules. In the inbound rules, only SSH is available. Because of SSH only, we are able to connect with the Linux machine. Now I want to allow 9090 traffic also. Add new rule, custom TCP, host port number 9090. Anywhere IPv4. Any request coming with the 9090 port number, allow that request. I'm telling to AWS. Click on save rule. So with this, my traffic is enabled. Now go to the dashboard. Check the public IP address of our machine. In the details of the machine, you can find out public IP. Access public IP. Go to the browser, Windows machine browser, public IP colon 9090 host port number /welcome /Ashok. Now I'm getting the response, Ashok, welcome to Ashok IT. So this is the response I am getting from my Spring Boot application. This is the response I'm getting from my Spring Boot application. Now you can give your name here. Suppose if you give the name as Raju in the URL, it will give Raju welcome to Ashok IT. So that means my application, my Spring Boot application running in the Docker container that we are able to access in the browser. If I give this URL, you can also access my application publicly now. This is running in the Linux machine. Hit that URL, change the name also. Whatever the name you give, with that name, it will give the welcome message. Are you able to access my application now? Are you able to access my application now? So where is my application running? In the Docker container. Where is that Docker container? In the Linux machine. Where is that Linux machine? In the AWS cloud. So this is how we are going to execute the applications in the real time as a container. Are you clear with my point? So one container is running on the machine that is running on the port number 9090. So host machine IP we are using to access that container. That means our application running in the container, we are able to access that by using port mapping. What is the port number we are mapping on the host machine? On the host machine, we are mapping to 9090. Container is running on 9090. Host machine port number also I am using 9090. Suppose if you are running this in the Windows machine, instead of the public IP, you will use local host here. If you are using Windows machine, if you are using Docker in the Windows, Instead of a public IP, you can use the local host. That's it. If you are using in the Linux machine, you will use public IP, host to public IP. Host means in which machine your Docker software is running, that is called your host machine. In which machine Docker software is running, that is called host machine. Are you able to follow me? Are you guys able to follow me? URL is working for you? Is the URL working for you? Change the name and check it. Are you getting the response with your name or not? Guys, these classes are completely practical. You need to join with laptop. Don't attend the classes from your mobile. Don't attend the classes from your mobile. So sit in the room and attend the classes with your laptop only. Then only you will get the clarity. Okay. Now, can we run one more application now as a Docker container in the same host machine? Can we run multiple containers in the machine? Can we run multiple containers in the single host machine? Yes. Let me do that. I will tell you one more container execution process. Okay. So here I am having public Docker image, guys. Public Docker image. What is the image? Public Docker image name. Anybody can access. This is my image name. Public Docker image name is this. Public Docker image name. This image is belongs to which application, guys? Java Spring Boot application. So in this Docker image, which application is available? Java Spring Boot application is available. How we are running that Java Spring Boot application? This is the final command. This is the syntax, guys. Syntax. Port mapping syntax. Port mapping syntax. This is basic. Downloading the Docker image, running the Docker image, run the container in the detached mode, run the container with the port mapping. Okay. Run the container with the port mapping actual command. Okay. Then how to access? We are going to use this URL. So the host port number we need to enable in the security group inbound rules to allow the traffic. Now, public Docker image name, I'm giving another Docker image name for Python application, guys. I have another Docker image of the Python application. The name of the Docker image is Python Flask app. What is the image name? Ashok IT / Python Flask app. It is available in my Docker Hub. That is my Docker image, which contains a Python application. Can we run that Python application and can we access that? Now, can you tell me how to run this Python application now? We are running Java application by using Docker image and we are able to access. Similarly, can we run Python application and can we access that? Can you help me with the commands I need to execute? Can you help me with the commands I need to execute to run the Python application? I don't know which port number it will use. You need to find out everything and you need to run this. First, what is the first step? Where is the Docker image available for the Python application now? Where is the Python application available now? Python application is available in my Docker Hub. That is a public image. Can you download that image now? How to download the Docker image? Docker full image name. Ashok IT / Python Flask app. I'm pulling the Docker image for the Python application. Then how to run this Python application now as a Docker container? Docker run -d -p host port, guys. Host port container port. Do you know the container port number? Do you know the container port number or you don't know the container port number? Do you know the container port number or you don't know the container port number? We don't know. Then how to check it? First run the container and check the port number. then stop it, then run the container with the port mapping. Can we do that now? Okay, see how to check the container port number. I got disconnected from the machine. Let me connect back. SSH command. Very good. Check the Docker images. One image available. Spring Boot image is available. Now, Docker pull my image name. Docker pull image name Ashok IT Python Flask application. Docker pull Ashok IT Python Flask application. Downloading the image. Can I check the logs of the image, or I can check the logs of the container, guys? Image logs will be available or container logs will be available? Container logs will be available. So can I run this container in the normal mode to see the port number? Then I will stop it. First I will run it and I will see the port number, then I will stop it. Okay, so can you help me? Can you help me to run this? Docker images. Yeah, run it. Docker run, not in the detached mode. Directly I am running just to see the port number. Docker run Ashok IT Python Flask app. It is going to run the container. Now can you see on what port number it is running now? On what port number it is running now? 5000. So without a detached mode I am running. It is printing the messages. Serving the Flask, Python Flask application. Okay, so it is running. It is running. On which port number? 5000. How to stop this container now? Control C. When I press Control C, it will stop. When I press Control C, it will stop. It is running on the port number 5000. Now can you run this with a host port as 5000, host port as 5000, container port also as a 5000. You got my point? Sir, who will decide this port number? In the application, developer will decide this. Okay? In the application, developer can decide the port number. Okay? Good. Now Docker run -d -p 5000:5000 Ashok IT / Python Flask app. That's it. Now before this, let us see how many containers in the running mode. Docker PS. How many containers in the running mode now? Come on, can you respond? How many containers are in the running mode now? Only one, related to Java application. And it is mapped to which port number? 9090. Can I map another container also to the same port number on the host machine? Can I map two applications to the same port number on the host machine? No. So every application should have a different port number. So Java is using 9090. Now Python is going to use 5000. Different, unique port number. Yes, let me run this. Docker run Python application with the -d detached mode, -p host port 5000. You can give anything. Container port cannot be changed. Host port number can be changed, but container port number cannot be changed. Already they fixed it in the coding only. Developer fixed that port number in the code. Host port you can change whatever you want, but container port you can't change now. Are you clear? Good. Now execute. So I created one more container for the Python application. Now check the Docker PS. Now can you see two containers are running? One container related to Java application running from 15 minutes. That is running on the port number 9090. Another container for the Python application running from 7 seconds, that is mapped to port number 5000. Can I run multiple containers on the single host machine? Can I run multiple containers on the single machine? Guys, subject is interesting or subject is boring? These tools are my favorite. Very, very, very interesting. Subject is interesting or subject is boring? So the real DevOps you are learning now. The real DevOps. Okay. So if you know Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, you can play. You can play with your application executions in the real time. If you are perfect in the Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, along with that Terraform and Ansible. So if you know these 5 tools, then you can crack the DevOps interviews. Docker, Kubernetes, Jenkins, Terraform, Ansible. 5 tools are very, 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 very important. This is very interesting topic. Without this, today, without this Docker container, no project will be executed in the real time. No project will be executed in the real time without using the containers concept. 100%. No project will be executed without containers. That much demand is there for containerization concept in the industry. So not only for DevOps people, every software developer also should know this concept. Docker means not only for DevOps, even every software developer, Java developer, Python developer, .NET developer, React developer, Angular developer, Node.js developer should know these containers. Everybody should know. Every software engineer should know. Okay, good. Now, I want to access Python application. Can we access this Python application directly, or we need to enable port number? Can we access Python application directly, or we need to enable port number? We need to enable the port number. Okay, so go to security group. What is the port number? 5000. Go to our EC2 machine, select the EC2 machine, then go to security tab, click on this security group, inbound rules, edit. Earlier we enabled 9090 for Java Spring Boot application. Now add the rule. What is that rule? 5000. Any request which is coming to 5000, I want to enable. Save that. Done. Now take the public IP of the machine. Take the public IP of the machine. Details. Public IP. So public IP : 5000/. Welcome to Python Flask application from Ashok IT. So this is the URL that will give you Python application access. I gave in the chat box. Can you check it now? Are you able to access? So in my host machine, 2 containers are running. One container for Java Spring Boot application, another container is related to Python Flask application. Now you check both applications. Both URLs you can hit. Both applications you can access now. Java application is running, Python application is running. That means 2 containers are running in the same host machine. 2 containers mapped to 2 different port numbers in the host machine. Java application is mapped to 9090 and Python application is mapped to 5000. That's it. If you want to change the output, you need to change the code of the project, then you need to recreate the Docker image, then you need to recreate the container. So currently we are executing the images which are already available in the Docker Hub. If you want to change the output, then you need to change the code, then you need to recreate the Docker image, then you need to recreate the container. That we are going to see. So first we need to know how to create our own Docker image for the project. So what we need to learn to create our own Docker image? We need to learn Docker file. How to write the Docker file? First we need to learn. So today just we understood how to execute the Docker images and how to do the containers port mapping and how to access our application. Are you guys clear? How to run the real world applications by using Docker images? Do you understand port mapping? Do you understand the port mapping? URL to access. Application URL. This is the URL for my Java application. Okay. Similarly, for Python application, what is the URL? Python application URL. Public IP host port, that's it. Host port I'm giving as 500 that you can use to access. This is Java application URL. This is Python application URL. I hope you are clear. Host port we need to enable in the security group inbound rules to allow the traffic. Okay, so just two concepts we understood today. What is the detached mode and what is port mapping? Okay, so can you guys tell me what is port mapping here, guys? What is port mapping in the Docker? Why we need to go for port mapping? Can anyone tell me what is port mapping in the Docker? Why we need to go for port mapping? Come on. Port mapping is the process of linking ports on the Docker container to ports on the host machine to allow the external access to applications running inside the container. What is port mapping? Docker port mapping is the process of linking ports on the Docker container to ports on the host machine. Okay, it is used to allow external access to applications running inside the container. Port mapping. Docker port mapping is the process of linking container port number to the host machine port number. Linking container port to host machine port. It is used to allow external access to applications running inside the container. So why it is required, guys? By default, services running inside a Docker container are isolated and not accessible from outside. That is the main reason. Why we need this? By default, services running inside a container are isolated and not accessible from outside. Port mapping exposes specific ports from the container to host machine so users can access our applications. Okay, Docker port mapping is the process of linking container port to host machine. By default, services running inside a Docker container. By default, services running inside a Docker container are isolated and not accessible from outside. So what is this -p? Port publishing. -p represents publish. What is the syntax to do this one? Docker run. Already we have seen above. Docker run -p host port, container port, image name. So host port and container port should be same or they can be different, guys. Come on. They need to be same or no need to be same. Host port and container port no need to be same. Okay, remember that point. Host port and container port no need to be same. We can map them to the different port numbers also. We can map them to the different port number. Whatever the port number we are mapping, that we need to enable in the security group inbound roles. Okay, yes, good. So with this, we got the clarity on what is the Docker, why Docker, life without Docker, life with Docker, Docker architecture, Docker setup, basic Docker commands, and how to run the containers and how to access containers from our Windows machine. Now from tomorrow, we are going to understand how to write the Docker file, how to create our own Docker image, how to push the Docker image to Docker Hub. Okay, currently we are executing the images which I already created, but how to create your own image? That is what we are going to learn from tomorrow. So the tomorrow topic is Docker file. The tomorrow topic is Docker file. Very, 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 very important. Without knowing the Docker file, can you create the Docker image? No. Without a Docker image, you can't do anything. So tomorrow, when you want to work with Kubernetes, Docker image is mandatory. So to create the Docker image, Docker file is mandatory. So to write the Docker file, tomorrow class attendance is mandatory. You got my point. Tomorrow class attendance is mandatory to attend the class. Tomorrow in the class we are going to learn what is Docker file, how to write the Docker file. So I will tell you how to write the Docker file for Java, for Python, for Angular, for React, multiple technologies. How to create the Docker images that we are going to discuss in the tomorrow session. Okay, good. Fine, guys. Thank you. Thank you. So with this, our free class is completed. So please complete your enrollment process to attend the classes from tomorrow. Tomorrow class Zoom link will be changed and I will update in the portal. Thank you, guys. Today's notes and video I will upload in our Google Classroom. Thank you. Good night.